So how is everybody doing today? My name is Ladio, and I've been a student of the Bible for the past 30 plus years. So I wanted just to go over some of the foundations of the faith. And some people may not think it's important to go over these things, but I can assure you that if your foundation at the very beginning isn't sound, well, then there's no reason why you should believe in Christ. Might seem harsh, but Christ pointed back to the beginning or to creation. So today I'd like to go over the book of Genesis, the creation story, and also use the book of Jubilees, also known as Little Genesis. Now, Jubilees is controversial to many. However, since the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, it has been accepted more in Christian communities or in Torah communities. So I just wanted to use the book of Jubilees to give a more ancient perspective, second witness, if you will, that is coming from the mind of possibly the Essenes or the understanding of the Hebrew Israelites or the Jews of that time. So anyways, let's get right to it. I think that was enough of an introduction. So you get your scriptures open to Genesis 1, and we're going to start at verse 1. Now this is going to be a methodical study from the very beginning. So I'm going to be pausing and jumping here and there to get an understanding of what these verses mean while they're still fresh in your memory. Okay? So let's begin. In the beginning, the Most High God created the heaven and the earth. Now I'm going to pause right there. That for many people is an introductory statement or the introduction to the beginning. However, if you take it to mean literally that in the beginning, time, God, the Most High God, created the heaven, space, and the earth, matter. Now some will say that this is actually when the Most High God created time, space, and matter. The very beginning of how existence must form. So let's go to verse 2 now. It says, "And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of the Most High God moved upon the face of the waters." Now I'm going to pause again because there is an argument that this is actually the second creation or perhaps even more. In other words, there was an existence supposedly before the creation of Adam during the story. And some people will take this verse 2 where it says, "And the earth was without form and void," and they'll take it as the word tohu, which means emptiness. They'll say that it can also be used to say as to destroy. So in other words, this is the second destruction, or I'm sorry, the destruction of the first existence, the first reality. And many will claim there was a pre-Adamite race. Well, if we keep reading in Genesis, there's no clue of that. And that's why I like to use the book of Jubilees, because Jubilees will solidify a little bit more of Genesis. Even tells us when the spirits were made. So the other thing they'll say is because it says without form and void, it could be reinterpreted as saying that the earth is being reformed after it has been destroyed. Then they'll go to the book of Jeremiah, and where Jeremiah is talking of a prophecy of a city, they'll say that because there are no man around or men are not around, yet there are animals that are around in the cities, there was no time during this existence when animals and man weren't living together. So they conclude there must have been another beginning or another race of beings And many of them will say that these were angels. So, just want to say that you have to do a lot of twisting for that. And to be honest, the translators of the KJV and others, they never saw it fit to say it has been reformed or it has been destroyed and then remade. For this reason, it doesn't read that way. And no Hebrew scholar, actual Hebrew scholar, will show this, minus people like, from what I understand, Chuck Missler, who does understand the Hebrew, and he's the one that I've heard teach this pre-Adamite or pre-existence before Adam and Eve. However, he is in the very small minority, and no ancient works affirm what he's saying. And I believe the only reason he uses that is to allow for the Earth to be 4.7 to 5 billion years old, which is what secular science or mainstream science will tell us. As many people already know, scriptures for at least the considering around the time of Christ, they believe that the Earth was still rather old. And I'm going to use one other book to show that, which would be the Epistle of Barnabas. Not saying that it should be read as holy writ or that it should be accepted into your faith, but I like to use it because it is traced back to around the time of Christ, shortly around the time of Christ, and it tells you directly how old the earth will be once it's judged and destroyed. And I'm pretty sure you guys could take a guess on how old that would be. Anyway, let's continue. This is going to be verse 3. Oh, I must pause before I continue. One more thing is, many people would say that because waters are already appearing in verse 2, that there must have been a planet here before, or the earth must have been here before. Since water wasn't called made, it was just said as being here. And if you say something like that, well, take taking a building into construction for consideration. When you plot out the land, you have the space and you have the time for that. When somebody brings in the material, and let's say we were just to bring in raw material, plywood, shingles, and other building materials to get this together, nails and wood and tiles and doors, and they were just together. Well, that wouldn't have any form whatsoever. It would have all the material that's needed to make your building, but it wouldn't have the right articulation as of yet. And it takes time to make this articulation. And this is one of the things that the Most High God is showing us in Scripture. It took time. It didn't take millions of years, but it took at least a full day for these things to be carried out. Okay, that's enough now. I know that I wanted to stop earlier, but I must address that because some people who may watch this video will see that waters are already said of being made in verse 2. Well, you'll see that just because it says the waters are there, well, that's basically the earth. That was the earth at the very beginning, just a watery blob. That was the time that there was nothing else on the earth. It was just water. And it says that in Scripture, in the New Testament, the earth was made in and out of the water. It's really that simple. Putting all these twists into Scripture to make millions of years fit into the Bible is unnecessary. Verse 3, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God, the Most High God, divided the light from the darkness. And the Most High God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. So, light. Many people just assume what is used to illuminate areas is light. People who study a little bit more will see, well, light is basically energy. Well, that is true. Light is energy. And I want to bring you guys to a physicist named Dr. Lambert Dolphin. His website is www.ldolphin.org. And he's got an article, What is Light? So if you go to www.ldolphin.org/light.html, you'll see a fascinating article he has written on light. And one of the things that he says, in his opinion, which I see much support for, is when the Most High God says, let there be light, it literally can mean let there be energy in all wavelengths and in all forms. So, energy in any wavelength, in any form, would also include radioactive material. I propose that this is when the Most High God literally made not just the light, the energy that we see, but also the core of the earth. I believe this is when he made uranium. It is the very first energy that is inside of the earth. It really powers the electromagnetic field of the earth. So, since it can be demonstrated that light, or at least argued, forgive me, that light can be considered energy in all wavelengths and all forms, I would actually say that this is when the Most High God made the core of the earth, which didn't exactly power the electromagnetic field just yet. That would actually have to be in conjunction with one more thing. So, this is also when the Most High God put energy into effect, as we're saying. And you'll also see that in the book of Jubilees, if you understand his spirits as energy, well, the Most High God must have made spirits on day one as well, such as the angels. But I digress. We'll get to that later. Let's continue. And this would be verse 6. And it says, and the Most High God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And the Most High God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And the Most High God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. Now, real quick, did you notice he didn't call it good? Now let's take a step back one more time. If you were to take your calendar out and look, what is the second day of the week? Well, that just happens to be Monday. And we all know how much people love Monday. So, just a little joke, but it looks like even the Most High didn't call Monday good. So, just as a little joke right there, I didn't want to take that to be serious, but I do want to show you that what is the firmament? Now, if you've been online for a little while, I'm pretty sure you've heard of the flat earth theory. And no, I am not a flat earther. No. What I am, though, is a geocentrist, and that's for another time. I do believe that this firmament is not a shell or a glass dome or any sort of dome that covers the earth. As a matter of fact, I believe the firmament can be demonstrated not just in the Strong's exhausted concordance, but it can be demonstrated in other sources that the firmament is actually the ether. Now you're saying, now what is the ether? Well, some of you will be familiar that the ether was a substance that was a medium considered by Tesla. And I could show you if you go to the dictionary.babylon-software.com/firmament, you'll actually have the definition of what the firmament is. And if you go down towards the Rafiat dictionary, this is where we'll get outside understanding from mainstream Bible scholars what is the firmament. And it says firmament combines the meanings of support, expanse, and boundary, a translation of the Latin firmamentum, a support, which again renders the Greek steroma, a foundation. The Hebrew is rakia, an unfolding or expanse. The ordinary European meaning is the vault or heaven or sky. It is often identified with air, called the breath of the supporters of the heavenly dome in Islamic mysticism. In India, the ethery expands in the dome of Indra and reads of 1008 divisions of Devolka, or the god worlds, and firmaments. It also relates to the support pillar or cosmology in so many ancient cosmologies to uphold or support the world. In this connection, waters in Hebrew often has the mystical significance of ethers, or ether with an A, and hence, in the division between the waters above and the waters below, does not refer to the common fluid. In this sense, firmament signifies one aspect of ring pass knot, the dividing line between one hierarchical division and another, which divisions, rings, or firmament mutually supports and completes each other, and thus build up a web or fabric of cosmic structure. So with this, if you might have heard that it said it is not the common fluid that we know of, but I'm going to actually show you that there's an argument that it is. And what I also want you to notice, it says it is the fabric of the cosmic structure. And it literally says that the handiwork of the Most High God is shown by the firmament. Okay, now that was from Babylon, the Babylon Dictionary. That's what it was from, and it was under Rakifit, which is the last definition. I want to bring you to a better source than that. That was just something just to show you there is outside Bible sources that will show you that yes, it's the ether. And here's another one. This is if you go to etymonline.com. It'd be etymonline.com and type in the word ether. And from that, you'll get ether, noun, Latin upper regions of space, from the Old French ether, and directly from the Latin ether, the upper, pure, bright air, sky, firmament. Firmament. From Greek ether, upper air, bright, pure air, the sky opposed to air, or the lower air. From Athenian to burn, sign, from pi, or to burn. In ancient cosmology, the element that has filled all space beyond the sphere of the moon, constituting the substance of the stars, planets, conceived of as a pure form of fire or air, or as a fifth element. From the 17th century to the 19th century, it was a scientific word for an assumed frame or reference for forces in the universe, perhaps without material properties. The concept was shaken by the Michelson-Morley experiment. Now that is the experiment that Einstein got famous from and that Tesla struggled with, because many people were trying to say that the ether was nullified because of the Michelson-Morley experiment in 1887. However, if you read what was written, it didn't say it was falsified. It didn't reach the conclusions of 30 kilometers per second that the Earth should be moving in. It was a much lower calculation, something around 8 to 12 kilometers per second. So it basically left questions as to if we're going around the sun at 66,500 miles per hour, why aren't we moving at that speed according to this test? It appears that there's movement that's going on, but it's much slower. So that basically puts the whole model of the sun being 93 million miles away and we're going around at 66,500 miles per hour. It puts that to question. There were other experiments that actually tried to find the spin of the Earth using the same technique of the ether. And this was done in the late 1800s, early 1900s, until Einstein was given the pass. Okay, so right here it says it was discarded. This ether theory was discarded early in the 20th century after the theory of relativity won acceptance. See how it says won acceptance? But before it gave rise to the colloquial use of ether for the radio. So people used it, and honestly, you'll find out in satellites they still use this medium known as the ether back then, which some people call space foam today. That's when you get into quantum mechanics. They'll literally say that ether, it gave us an understanding of this world, which we were able to fasten certain devices such as the radio or wireless communications. So anybody who's interested in really finding out what the ether is or what the firmament is, and you don't want to look into these YouTube videos, you want to actually get to some science, actual written scientific works, well then I challenge you to go to www.mountainman.com.au/ether, AETHER.html. And here you're going to find article after article. Let's see, there are 50 articles all on the ether. And you have them from various physicists throughout the world that are still writing on the ether. Some of them are a little older. Some of them are around the 80s, 70s, and 80s. And some of them are pretty recent. So I challenge anybody who really wants to understand this world, this reality, in a similar fashion to Tesla, although I don't think I could never reach that level. I challenge you to at least get there, a better understanding by finding out what is the ether or the firmament. Ever heard of 0-point energy? This is where they're deriving it from, okay? Anyways, that was quite a long explanation of the firmament, but many people don't know what the firmament is. And it's been purposely, a theory such as flat earth has been purposely pushed by elite organizations to muddy not just this truther community that has developed, but the Christian understanding, the Christian fundamentalisms. Many people now believe if you're a Christian fundamentalist, well, then you don't believe in a round earth, you believe in a flat earth, you probably don't believe in dinosaurs, and you probably believe that the earth is very young. What's funny is I only believe in one of those things, that the earth is very young. The other two things, which are purposely straw-manned out to believers or to Christian truthers, well, that is something that's not new. So we as believers must continue to carry the faith on, knowing that we're going to take ridicule. Anyways, let's continue. And this is going to be on verse 10. And the Most High God, this is verse 9, forgive me. It says, and the Most High said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And the Most High called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the water he called the seas. And the Most High saw that it was good. And the Most High said, let the earth bring forth grass, and the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, and whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, and the herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And the Most High God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day. Now, if you notice, the Most High caused the land to be risen up first, and then trees bearing fruit. Now, that sounds like the earth or the ground had to be made quite rapidly. That it couldn't have taken a plate tectonic action to get the earth here, or the gathering of matter over thousands of years here, or rain and how that supposedly filled up our land that was here, because what mainstream science tells us is that the earth first started off as like hot molten lava, very hot, and it cooled, and then somehow rain got here, probably through comets and meteors, and this billions and billions and trillions of tons of water got here through means outside of the earth. And somehow it also accounts for the water that's found underneath the land, which is amazing how they figure that out. But my point is, since I did go on a tangent there, my point is, when the Most High God called the land up, well, granite and other formations had to have been made rather quickly. Well, is there evidence for that? Is there evidence that falsifies that? There is evidence that falsifies that granite was made with heat. And there was a pretty challenging scientist. His name is Dr. Robert Gentry. I believe back in the 70s, he was in charge of waste disposal for nuclear products. And he was working at... well, forgive me. He was working in a well-known radioactive disposal unit. And he is a physicist and a geologist. And he's come to find out that there was something very unique inside of granite. It was called polonium halos. What I understand this to be is basically polonium is a daughter element of uranium. Now, one side note is, how did the elements get here? If we're trying to believe that hydrogen and helium made uranium, that is impossible. I mean, people may try to give you an understanding as to how, but honestly, chemical evolution, or the origin of where chemicals and elements come from, is extremely puzzling to anybody. We don't understand it just yet. Many people try to say it's formed inside stars. That can't be possible. We have heavier elements, but it's up to iron that we're able to at least find. Anyways, my point is, this polonium halos being found inside granite shows that polonium at one time was in existence inside of granite. Now, the crazy thing about polonium is it has a very fast half-life, mere minutes, if that. And this shows that polonium being left over, or evidence of polonium, shows that there would have to have been a very quick change from uranium to polonium all the way down to when we get lead. So this change happened very quickly, and it wasn't destroyed by heat or lava, which heat and lava would destroy this. Instead, it's showing that the granite is made inside of water. What is that means of making granite? We don't know. I challenge anybody to look up how to make granite. It's one of those unsolved mysteries still, at least in science. So what this fingerprints of creation, or these polonium halos, have shown is that the earth was made in the water, And it was also made very quickly. The earth, the substance that we walk on, the dirt, the granite. And right after that, the Most High God placed trees and fruit-bearing plants all over the earth. Now, some people would say, well, why doesn't it mention the Garden of Eden being made at this time? Well, surprisingly, there is a source, as you'll read soon, that says that, yes, this is the day that the Most High God made the paradise that we know as the Garden of Eden. Anyways, let's continue. So, if we go to verse 14, it begins with, "And the Most High God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And the Most High made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also." Did you notice that he made the moon separate from the sun, separate from the stars? Yet in mainstream science, again, we're told that the sun is a star, that they're the same. The Bible doesn't exactly hint at that in any way. So if you're believing that the sun is a star, I'm not saying you're a heretic, but I'm saying that you at least believe in a falsehood. Okay? Because the Bible doesn't say it. I mean, other scriptures say that the sun and the moon and the stars, well, they're all separate from each other. That each one has its own glory. So that means that the sun can't be a star. And if you look if you have a very powerful telescope and look at stars, well, they don't look anything like you would think they do. And let's continue. Oh, well, one more side note is, do you remember the day before, on day 3, the Most High God made the plants? Well, let's say that each one of these days equals 1,000 years, as Peter tells us, okay? So millions of years. Well, these plants would have died long off between plants being made on day 3 and the sun, the light source of plants, the food source for plants, being made on day 4. But if they're made, in consecutive days within a 24-hour period, there's absolutely no problem. Okay. And this is verse 20. "And the Most High said, Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. And the Most High created great whales, and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly, after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And the Most High saw that it was good. And the Most High blessed them, saying, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the 5th day." Now, I know that sounds a little crazy, but it appears that fowls came from the water. A lot of people don't realize that birds come from the water, made the same day as the fish or the great whales. And those creatures that move in the waters, like crabs and shrimp, those would be considered the lower end or the lower lives of sea life, since they're bottom feeders. Anyways, and this is going to be verse 24. "And the Most High said, Let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing, and the beast of the earth after his kind. And it was so. And the Most High made the beast of the earth after his kind, and the cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And the Most High saw that it was good. And the Most High said, Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. And the Most High created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female created he them. Now I want you to just think about that right there, how he says male and female created he them. Because Jubilees gets a little puzzling at this point. And one more thing before I continue is, when the Most High also said, let there be every creepy thing on the land, well, this is when he made the pollinators for the trees and the plants back in day 3, which is another puzzle to deep time, is if plants and insects come from two separate shared ancestors, or two separate ancestors that do have a single common ancestor from a bacteria, if these two, plant life, biology, and I guess bug biology, or I really can't pronounce the word, but any insect that pollinates, the pollinators, if they were made, or if they came around millions of years apart from each other, how did those plants continue to pollinate if pollinators weren't made or weren't around during the time that plants needed to be pollinated? Because insects and other pollinators would have took time to come into the existence that we know of them today. They would have had a process that they would have went to. And there are certain very specific plants that only attract certain types of pollinators, certain wasps or bees or birds. And these certain plants only attract these certain bugs. Well, if you separate the two, even by a few decades, you're going to have a choking out of these genes and chances of them dying. But they're trying to tell us that these evolved separate from each other, and somehow they've come to form a relationship anthropomorphically. But as puzzling as that sounds, if the bees and the birds and the pollinators were made on day 6 and day 5 because of the birds, well, there's no issue of pollination going on. This all literally can be lined up logically as how these could come in order. Okay, well, let me continue about on man. And the Most High blessed them and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it. Pause. That word replenish. Again, the people who love to believe that the earth is millions of years old and that you can fit millions of years into a gap between verses 1 and 2 will also use this word, replenish. In the King James Bible and say, do you see? It says replenish, as in to fill again. The thing is, replenish, today's understanding of replenish, the term, is a rather new term that came around when Francis Bacon added a second meaning to the word replenish. Initially, replenish meant to fill once, or to fill. When Francis Bacon was alive, he influenced the English language so much that he even added a second meaning to the word replenish, which means today to fill again. Let's continue. So it says, and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And the Most High said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, and it is upon the face of the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of the tree yielding seed, to you it shall be for meat. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to every thing that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat. And it was so. And the Most High saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the 6th day. Now I want to pause right here. And before we go into the book of Jubilees, I want to show that this is another argument that's used a lot of times, because it's saying that it was very good here, and yet people would say that Lucifer had already fallen at this time, and that perhaps the Luciferian flood may have happened at this time or by this time. Well, then how can it be called good if there's already Satan running around in rebellion? No, Satan fell a little bit later. I'm not going to get into the explanation of that today, but in future videos I may, because there is something of a aggression towards man from Satan, and we all know it. Many of us believe it's because we're simply built in the image of the Most High God. Well, arguably angels are built in a similar image. They have heads, they have hands, you can read it in scripture, they can arguably do that. But there was something about man that the Most High God saw fit to give favor and grace to. Okay. So, now that we got that, and before we go into the book of Jubilees one more time, I wanted to briefly share one of the New Testament apocryphal writings. Okay, this is known as the Epistle of Barnabas. Now, this directly tells us how old the earth is. Very quickly, if you go to Barnabas, chapter 15, verse 2 through verse 5, we hear an explanation to the creation that we just read of. Okay, so we go, once again, the Epistle of Barnabas. This is not the Gospel of Barnabas. This is the epistle, or the letter of Barnabas. Okay, and this at one time was a part of Codex Sinaiticus, which is one of the oldest Bibles that we have today. Now, I don't know why it didn't make it into today's Bible, but it's not there. So it says, chapter 15, verse 2, "And in another place he hath said, If my sons observe the Sabbath, then I will bestow my mercy upon them. Of the Sabbath he speaketh in the beginning of the creation, and the Most High made the works of his hands in 6 days." Tells you right there, in 6 days. And this is not in the Hebrew, this is in the Greek, which is a different word. "And he ended on the 7th day and rested on it, and he hallowed it." Verse 4, "Give heed, children, what this meaneth. He endeth in 6 days. He meaneth this, that in 6,000 years the Most High Lord shall bring all things to an end, for the day with him signifying 1,000 years." Says a day with him signifying 1,000 years. "And this he himself beareth me witness, saying, Behold, the day of the Lord shall be as 1,000 years." Remember that? In 2 Peter? "Therefore, children, in 6 days, that is in 6,000 years, everything shall come to an end. And he relayed on the 7th day. This he meaneth, when his Son shall come and abolish the time of the lawless one, and shall judge the ungodly, and shall change the sun and the moon and the stars." Once again, different continents. "Then shall he truly rest on the 7th day." Well, you heard it right there. "Therefore, children, in 6 days, that is, in 6,000 years, everything shall come to an end." Now, I'm not saying that you need to believe that everything is coming into the end in 6,000 years. What I'm showing you is that during the time of the founding of the church, which is at the very infancy of Christianity, around the time of Christ, this was the thought of the age of the earth. This is the thought of what many believers felt, that the earth was very young in considering deep time today. All right? Everything within 6,000 years. And there are people who have argued this without using the Epistle of Barnabas. They have intelligently argued that since the Most High uses symbolism in all things, that one day equals 1,000 years and 1,000 years equals a day, which is why Adam lived just shy of 1,000 years, which means he died in the same day he was created. Even though people have understood that, they have also understood that that could also mean that creation is less than 6,000 years. And in the book of Revelation, when we're told there'll be 1,000 years reign of peace with Yeshua HaMashiach, Yeshua, then that must mean everything will be said and done and closed at 7,000 years. What's funny is even another source, another fascinating and controversial source known as the Book of Enoch, in its 10-week prophecy, if you divide each week, or if you equate each week to equal 700 years, 10 weeks is divided up. Well, then you'll see that each event lines up with biblical timelines, and everything will come to a close at the end of 7,000 years. It's a fascinating study, but that's not for today. What we're going to do now is get into the book of Jubilees. Now, the book of Jubilees is, again, another fascinating book that has been very controversial. When it was found with the Dead Sea Scrolls, it solidified, at least at the Ethiopian Coptic Church, that they had a closer faith to arguably the Essenes, since they're carrying the same writings as many of the Essenes. I mean, they have the Apocrypha, just as the Essenes did. They have also the book of Jubilees and the book of Enoch. Okay, so if you go to chapter 2, this is when the Most High is dictating or telling the angels, he told the angels, write down this book for Moses and tell him what has happened. And he's going to take it all the way back to the creation. But this was another book, arguably the 5th book, because it's not believed by most scholars that Moses wrote Genesis, but it is believed that he wrote Exodus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and Leviticus. Well, this 5th book would have been the book of Jubilees. It says, chapter 2, verse 1, and the angel of the presence spake to Moses according to the word of the Most High, saying, write the complete history of creation. In 6 days the Most High finished all his work, and all that he created, and kept the Sabbath on the 7th day, and hallowed it for all ages, and appointed it as a sign for all of his works. For on the first day he created the heavens which are above, and the earth, and the waters. Tells you right there, he created the waters on day 1. And all the spirits which serve before him, the angels of the presence of the angels of sanctification, and the angels of the spirit of fire, and the angels of the spirit of the wind, and the angel of the spirit of the clouds, and of darkness, and of snow, and of hail, and of hoarfrost, and the angels of the voices, and of the thunder, and of the lightning, and the angels of the spirits of cold, and of heat, and of winter, and of spring, and of autumn, and of summer, and of all the spirits of his creatures which are in heaven and on earth. He created the abyss and the darkness, eventide and night, and the light, dawn, and day, which he hath prepared in the knowledge of his heart. And thereupon we saw his works, and praised him, and lauded before him on the account of all his works. For 7 great works did he created on the first day. And on the, well, pause before I continue. It says that whereupon of his works they praised him, or the angels praised him. Do you remember in the book of Job, chapter 38, verse 7, where it says that the angels of the Lord shouted for joy when the Most High God laid the foundations of the earth? Jubilees echoes that. And many people don't understand. Jubilees also tells us that the angels were made on the first day, and the water was made on the first day. Yet when you get into just the book of Genesis, you'll see that people such as Chuck Missler We'll question when the waters were made. It tells us in the book of Jubilees, the waters were made on day one. I would argue it's more dangerous to remove a book that we understood as being at least accepted by the Jews, by the Hebrews, or the Israelites. It's more dangerous to remove those books that they once understood as holy, such as the Apocrypha, Enoch, and Jubilees, than it is to keep it in. Because when you remove something, well, you can insert many things, and you can twist the Word of God to say many things which aren't there. Anyways, it says he made 7 great works on the first day. It says not only did he create the light, but like I said before, it was energy that he made. All of these things that we don't consider, the seasons, the wind, the dawn, the day, the darkness, these are things we don't consider as a creation. Yet in the book of Jubilees, it tells us these were all created. So let's go now to verse 4. And on the second day, he created the firmament in the midst of the waters, and the waters were divided on that day. What does he mean by the waters were divided on that day? The firmament, that medium of air that wets everything, as Tesla says, separates the waters that are here on earth from the waters that are above us. Now, I know that's crazy to say, but there has been water found in space. And I don't know exactly what's beyond the stars. I don't. Possibly there's water. That's just speculation on my part, and I don't want anybody to think that the scriptures directly teach that, but they do seem to hint at that. And we're finding water in space. Another explanation is the flood as to how water is being found in space. But I digress. But what is very fascinating is, again, we're being told the same story of the firmament separating the waters on day 2. Let's continue. Half of them went above, and half of them went down below the firmament. That was in the midst over the face of the whole earth, and this was the only work that the Most High created on the second day. He didn't say it was good on that. Remember, he only did this one work on the second day. He did 7 good things, or 7 things, great works, on the first day. Well, he only did 1 thing on the second day, Monday. And we got to go to verse 5. And it says, and on the third day he commanded the waters to pass from off the face of the whole earth into one place, and the dry land to appear. See how the land was already there? That's what I'm saying. It sounds like he would have made granite at the very beginning, because it sounds like land was there and it just fell off. The water just fell off the land. And the waters did so, and commanded them that they retire from off the face of the earth into one place outside of this firmament, and the dry land appeared. And on that day he created from them all the seas according to their separate gathering places, and all the rivers, and the gatherings of the waters in the mountains, and on all the earth, and all the lakes, and on all the dew of the earth, and the seed which is sown, and all sprouting things, and fruit-bearing trees, and trees of wood, and the garden of Eden. In Eden, and in all plants after their kind. These 4 works the Most High created on the third day. Now you heard him say, or you heard that the book of Jubilees says that the Garden of Eden was made on day 3. Some people like to say there's a retelling of Scripture, so that between Genesis 1 and 2. So basically, the Most High made the Garden of Eden on day 6, and then he made Adam and placed him in the garden, and then he made animals and placed them in the. Jubilees tells us a little bit more detail of how these things came to be. If you just read the book of Genesis, again, there's some room left in there to allow different interpretations and twisting of Scripture. When you use a second witness, like the book of Jubilees, well, it really solidifies our faith in a fundamental understanding, which isn't far-fetched. This is a more ancient, traditional way of looking at scriptures and at reality. So now we're going to go to verse 8. On the fourth day, he created the sun, moon, and stars, and set them in the firmament of the heaven, to give light upon all the earth, and to rule over the day and the night, and divide the light from the darkness. And the Most High appointed the sun to be a great sign on the earth, for days, and for Sabbaths, and for months, and for feasts, and for years, and for Sabbaths of years, and for Jubilees, and for all seasons of the years. And it divided the light from the darkness, and for prosperity, that all things may prosper, which shoot and grow on the earth. These three kinds he made on the fourth day. Tells us again, each creation of sun, moon, and stars was separate. They're not the same. The moon is not a star, the sun is not a star, and stars are not. They don't look like the sun nor moon. They're all different. And now we're going to go verse 11. And on the fifth day he created great sea monsters in the depths of the waters. For these were the first things of flesh. They were created by his hands. The fish and everything that moves in the water, and everything that flies. Everything that flies. The birds and all their kind. And the sun rose above them to prosper them, and above everything that was on the earth, everything that shoots out of the earth, and all fruit-bearing trees, and all flesh. These three kinds he created on the fifth day. You hear that? These three kinds, which would have been the fish, everything that flies, and the bird after their kind. Crazy. I don't know exactly what fish could mean. I mean, it doesn't say anything about clams. It don't say anything about lobsters or octopus. But apparently this is when he made all creatures that dwell in the waters, which is what Genesis tells us. It doesn't have to directly say the same thing, but it also says he created the great sea monsters in the depths of the waters, which arguably would be octopuses or dinosaurs, like Leviathan or the plesiosaurus. Anyways, I digress. Let's go to verse 13. And on the sixth day he created all the animals of the earth, and all cattle, and everything that moves on the earth. And after all this he created man, a man and a woman created he them. Remember I was telling you, and male and female he created them? Now listen. And he gave dominion over all that is upon the earth and in the seas, and over everything that flies, over beasts and over cattle, and over everything that moves on the earth, and over the whole earth. And over all this he gave him dominion. And these four kinds he created on the sixth day. There were altogether 22 kinds. And he finished all his works on the sixth day, all that is in the heaven and the earth, and in the sea, and in the abysses, and in the light, and in the darkness, and in everything. And he gave us a great sign, the Sabbath day, that we should work 6 days, but keep the Sabbath on the seventh day from all work, and that the angels of his presence and the angels of sanctification, these two great classes, he hath hidden us. The thing I want you to notice right there is there were 22 kinds in total that were built or made at the end of creation. That's crazy. Because I believe man would have been one of those kinds, which means there were 21 creatures or kinds that were made outside of Adam. Anyways, he hath hidden us to keep the Sabbath with him in the heaven and earth. And he said unto us, Behold, I will separate unto myself a people from among all the peoples, and these will keep the Sabbath day, and I will sanctify them unto myself as my people, and will bless them, as I have sanctified the Sabbath day, and do sanctify it unto myself. Even so shall I bless them, and they will be my people, and I shall be their God. And I have chosen the seed of Jacob from among all that I have seen, and have written him down as my firstborn, and have sanctified him unto myself forever and ever. And I will teach them the Sabbath, that they may keep thereon from all work. and thus he created therein a sign in accordance with which we should keep the Sabbath with us on the seventh day, to eat, drink, and to bless him, who hath created all things, as he hath blessed and sanctified unto himself a peculiar people above all peoples, and that they should keep Sabbath together with us. Pause. So when you keep the Sabbath on Saturday, on the seventh day, well then basically you're keeping it as the angels. And he caused his commands to ascend as a sweet savor, acceptable before him in all days. There were 22 heads of mankind from Adam to Jacob, and 22 kinds of work were made until the seventh day. You notice there were 22 kinds, and there were 22 kinds of work were made until the seventh day. This is blessed and holy, and the former also is blessed and holy, and this one serves with that one for sanctification and blessing. And to this Jacob and his seed it was gathered, that they should always be blessed and holy ones of the first testimony and law, even as he has sanctified and blessed the Sabbath day. On the seventh day he created heaven and earth, and everything he created in 6 days. And the Most High made the seventh day holy for all his works. Therefore he commanded us in his behalf, whoever doeth any work therefore shall die. And that he who defileth it shall surely die. Wherefore do thou command the children of Israel to observe this day, that they may keep it holy, and not do thereon any work, and not defile it, as it is holier than all other days. And whosoever profaneth shall surely die, and whosoever shall thereon any work shall surely die eternally, not internally. That the children of Israel may observe this throughout their generations, and not be rooted out of the land. For it is a holy day and a blessed day, and everyone who observeth it and keepeth Sabbath thereon from all his work will be holy and blessed throughout all days, like unto us. It's crazy, but it really tells us how holy the Sabbath day is. Declare and say to the children of Israel the law of this day, both that they should keep Sabbath thereon, that they should not forsake it in error of their hearts, and it is not lawful to do any work thereon, which is unseemly to do thereon their own pleasure, and that they should not prepare thereon anything to be eaten or drunk, and that it is not lawful to draw water, or bring in or take out thereon their own gates any burden which they had not prepared for themselves on the sixth day in their dwellings, that they should not bring in nor take out from house to house on that day, for that day is more holy and blessed than any Jubilee day of Jubilees. And on this we kept Sabbath in the heavens before it was made known to any flesh to keep Sabbath thereon the earth. And the Creator of all things blessed it. But he did not sanctify all people and nations to keep Sabbath thereon, but Israel alone, them alone, he permitted to eat and drink and to keep the Sabbath thereon the earth. And the Creator of all things blessed this day which he had created for a blessing and sanctification, and above all days the law and testimony was given to the children of Israel as a law forever unto their generations. Well, that's the end of chapter 2 of Jubilees. And it ends with us being told that not only did the Most High God create everything in 6 literal days and rested on the seventh, but the angels also rested on the seventh, and that it is made for the children of Israel. Well, we being grafted into the children of Israel, we as well are to observe the Sabbath day. It literally tells us anybody who stays away from work, on verse 28 it says, and everyone who observeth and keep the Sabbath thereon from all of his work will be holy and blessed for all days, like unto us, or like unto the angels. Which is why I do say it is very important to rest. Very important to rest on the Sabbath. Just as the Most High has commanded from the beginning of this covenant, that he has. And it was understood in heaven first, just like there was the law of God today was understood in heaven first. The whole thing about staying away from blood, well, the angels always knew that. Staying away from sexual immorality, the angels always knew that. Staying away from uncleanness, the angels always knew that. But we were told after the fall and after the Most High chose the people, well, this is what pleases the Most High. And it's because it's in direct relation to the creation of this reality. So there's one last thing I wanted to leave you guys with, because chapter 2 is going to be coming in another video. It's already getting a little over from what I planned, but I do need to finish up with this one last thing, and that is the Most High God, not just being described in the Hebrew scriptures and in the book of Jubilees or Enoch. You can actually find the Most High God in China. If you go to the very first dynasty or the oldest writings from China, you'll come across a god known as Shangdi. And I'm going to an outside believer source, so someone who is not part of the faith. I'm just going to a website known as globalchinacenter.org. Once again, that's globalchina-center.org/analysts/articles/names-for-god-shang, that is Sierra Hotel Alpha November Golf Delta India or D .php or Papa Hotel Papa. This article tells you directly that the Most High God, or the Creator God, known in Judaism as Yahweh, or in some people will say it's Ahaya, Sharhaya, or Echaya, Sharechaya, that the Elohim can be traced all the way back to ancient China, and he was known as Shangdi. So, let me read this quick article to you guys and give a brief explanation of who Shangdi is. There exist in China several names used to refer to supernatural beings whom they have worshipped. For Protestants especially, two of these are Shangdi and Xian. Though the word for heaven is Tian, it is also sometimes employed. In other words, Tian sometimes also has been employed as God. For several centuries, ever since Matteo Oriki, who was a Jesuit priest who went to China and found that the Chinese letters correspond to the biblical account. We could propose to use of Tian Zu, or Heavenly Lord, as the proper name for God. A great controversy has raised around which Chinese term is most accurate rendering of the Hebrew word Elohim and Greek Theos. At the risk of generating more strife, but in hopes of introducing a new factor into this discussion, I offer the following analysis. So this is by Dr. G. Wright Doyle. And we begin. Shangding, the name of the supreme being among the early Shang dynasty, which Shangding, according to C.K. Tong, in Faith of Our Fathers, he was believed to be unique, was never represented by an idol or image, and was an all-powerful and supreme deity, sovereign of surrounding nations as well. As the Chinese themselves ruled the forces of nature, governed the construction of cities, the outcome of wars, and the well-being of misfortune of human beings, amazingly, he received no cultic, manipulative worship. So there was no chanting going on during that time. They all understood, such as many believers today, that the Most High is in charge of everything and that he rules our reality. So they basically just gave homage and respect and always gave exaltation to Shangdi. When the Zhou dynasty replaced Shang, they believed that their supreme deity called Tian, heaven, was the name of Shangdi, and employed the two names interchangeably for a while. Later, Tian, heaven, became the standard term. There is no evidence that either of these names referred to a being who had a beginning. Tong opines that he may have been considered eternal. Shangding has become a personal name for God, while Tian seems to be an abstraction for the deity. This is an important point. As you can see, Shangding and Tian have some qualities similar to those of the God of the Bible. In addition, most Chinese know what these words mean, though they may have only a faint idea of their history. Thus, many Protestant Christians believe that Shangding is the best and indeed only proper translation for the two major names of God in the Bible, Elohim and Theos. Not only does it accurately rendering the meaning of the biblical terms, they say it also enables Chinese to connect immediately with the God of the Bible. And there is an argument even against what Shangding is, and you guys can continue reading that, but my point is there is history showing who Shangdi is, or the creator God. In ancient China, you could even YouTube a video known as God in Ancient China, where you will hear a Chinese pastor in front of a translator of Mandarin, in front of a Chinese audience, giving a lesson as how the Chinese characters, which are pictographic, how they directly relate to the Genesis account. I mean, words such as the word for big boat in Chinese is 8 miles, water, and boat, which in the biblical story of the flood, Noah put in 8 miles, or his family members, which was him, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives. So there were 8 people aboard the ark, which replenished the earth. Okay, well, I believe that will be about it for now. Let's see, it looks like I've gone a little over an hour into this video. So I will hope that everybody enjoys it. And if you have any questions, go ahead and leave a comment below, and I'll try to answer as soon as I can. This is a subject that I do find fascinating, and I hope to deliver a second video to continue not just the creation account, but to continue on with the creation of man and the fall of man. That should be the next video that would be coming out. And again, I'm going to be using the book of Jubilees. I'll be dipping into the book of Enoch and other small sources that you guys may find as fascinating as I have. Anyways, I hope this was a help, and may the Most High God bless each and every one of you.